Hi my friends, today we are going to make this block and this gavel for the president of the committee. Approve! Hi my friends, how are you? I hope everybody is fine. My name is Daniel Villarino. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Perhaps you have seen in the movies, particularly the legal movies, when the judge rules a judgment, he uses a gavel and a block and he hits the block with the gavel when he is doing the pronouncement. Also in the auctions, the auctioneer will do something similar when he designates who won the bid. And finally, in many committees and commissions, the chair of that committee or commission will hit with the gavel the block when a resolution is approved or when a decision is taken. I work day to day in a pension plan. I manage a pension plan, and that pension plan has a committee, but unfortunately the chair doesn't have a gavel and a block to do that whenever he approves a resolution. So I decided to make that in today's project. For that, we are going to need to turn three different pieces. The first one is going to be the head of the gavel, and for that I have this square blank. I made sure that the faces are perfectly square, and I also mark the centers on each end, and on one of the sides I mark a line right in the middle, and also I cut it right in the middle. I made a hole of 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to put the conversion to millimeters over here, and then I tap the hole with a tap that was 3/4 10 TPI for the threads, okay, because the handle is going to be threaded inside there. For the handle, I have another piece of maple. This one is also square blank. I also made certain that the faces are perfectly square, and I mark the centers on both ends. And finally, for the block, I have this piece. This is also maple. It was a square blank, and I made sure of cutting the corners at 45 degrees to make easier the turning. So that's going to be for the block. So that's today's project. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get to work. Before doing the perforation, I put a stop to ensure that the hole will not go beyond the middle part of the blank. The hole is 5/8 of an inch, about 16 millimeters, and the tap is 3/4 of an inch, about 19 millimeters, and 10 threads per inch. I begin the process of threading, and I make sure the tap is perpendicular to the blank. At the beginning it is a bit difficult, but the pilot hold helps in keeping perpendicularity. You may have guessed that the intention is to thread the handle into the gavel head. That way the connection will be pretty nice. If there is need, I can use glue, but if the connection is tight, I can leave it without glue, and that way, if in the future I need to replace the head or the handle, I can still reuse the other piece. At the beginning, I will place the blank between centers, and I make sure that it does not hit the tool rest. Between centers, I will make a cylinder and then a tenon to hold it in the chuck. All the turning of the head of the gavel could be done between centers, but if I place it in the chuck, I will save myself the hand sanding of one of the faces. I will turn at about 2000 RPMs. The grain of the blank runs parallel to the turning axis, so the most effective way to remove material is to cut perpendicular to the grain with push cuts, what in other videos we saw as fast roughing. At the end, I make a pull cut to even up all the ridges left by the previous cuts. Just for a matter of principle and also to practice a little with a skew chisel, I make a cut to smooth the cylindrical surface. On the top you can see the cylinder before the skew and below after the skew chisel. The difference is big. I still don't have a defined design for the gavel's head. I sort of going to go with the flow, but I am marking lines 2 inches and 1/4 to each side of the center and then spaces every 1/4 of an inch to have some references. Little by little, I began to imagine the shape I wanted to give to the head of the gavel. A thinner zone in the middle, a couple of beads to each side closer to the faces with a curve so the heat will be in a point. So in the next images I will be making cuts working in the direction of making those elements. All the cuts will be done symmetrically on one side and the other of the middle part. This part that sticks up is to make a bead. I mark the widths for a second bead. I begin to thin the central zone of the gavel's head by doing a long cove. Now I make the curvature of the faces of the gavel's head. I am going to sand every detail beginning with coarser sandpaper and then going to thinner sandpapers. I will cut thin long strips of sandpaper to be able to reach the bottom of the grooves. I eliminate the knob on the tailstock's side to finish that face. I even up the face with a spindle gouge and later I will sand it. hand sanding to the face that was on the side of the chuck, and the head of the gavel is ready. I place the longer blank between centers and I begin to true it up like I did with the previous blank. This one will be for the handle of the gavel. Also, in this case, I will make a tenon and secure it in the chuck. I will reduce the diameter of a sector at the end to 3/4 of an inch to later make the threads that will fit the head of the gavel. With a die, I will make threads that will match the female threads in the gavel's head. This maple is not very suitable for threading. The threads fall apart easily. For that reason, I made a long cylinder, and you will see that the first threads came apart completely. But then I make a more or less acceptable thread that will work towards the end of connecting the handle to the gavel's head. You will see that it works, and I just remove a little from the end. In the past, I have built this threaded glue block. You can see the video in the top right angle of the screen where the letter I appears. I will mount the blank there to work comfortably in the handle. For the handle, I want to make a couple of decorative elements at the end and a bit close to the connection to the gavel's head, but besides that, the line will be an elongated and soft curve. With the skew chisel, I will be doing cuts from the ends towards the center to make a prolonged curve. When the skew chisel is sharp and the cut is done with the lower third of the edge, the shavings look like long ringlets like the ones seen in this part of the screen. The part that sticks up will be the base for a nice bead closer to the threads. After sanding, I remove the little knob on the tailstock side. I remove a bit the end so that the threads will go in all the way and the handle is ready. To start the turning of the block, I will put it between centers. I do a try mark with a pencil and then I measure with the caliper to see if the diameter matches the one of the chuck jaws. It was too small. I mark another circumference and now I am in the correct measure. Please observe the difficult position of the parting tool. It is a cut that is being bothered by the body of the tailstock. For that reason, this mortise is a provisory one. It will serve to hold the piece with the chuck while I make a good mortise on the other side, one that will have the correct angle and without the encumbrance of the tailstock. Comfortably now, I even up what will be the base and I give it a certain concavity so it will have a nice seat against the table. Not having the hindrance of the live center makes easier to mark the diameter and make the cuts. I make the recess for my logo coin. I make several circles with a skew chisel to provide for more rugosity. Here I will glue my logo coin, but on the other side the committee chair will hit the block with the gavel, so I want to make sure that the glue will have good adherence. Having fulfilled its role, I can dismount the piece from the provisional mortise, turn it around and mount it in the final mortise to complete the block turning. With the spindle gouge, I round up the corners between the lateral wall and the base, and with the ball gouge I make some very soft pull cuts to leave a well-finished surface. The block shape will consist of 3 steps. I make a cut with the parting tool and then I will eliminate the excess with the ball gouge. Only remains to flatten the top part of the block and round up the borders using the skew chisel as a negative rake scraper. From there, a good sanding. I am going to stain the maple with a black cherry wood stain. The stain is applied with a good quality synthetic brush or with a cloth free of lint, and you let it act between 10 and 15 minutes, and then with a clean cloth you remove the excess. If the tone is too light, you can repeat the process for a darker tone. For the handle, I help myself with a threaded block to hold it. When it is finally all covered, I start the lathe at very low revs, so the stain will not drop and drip too much. Once all the surfaces have been covered and all the excesses removed, I will let the pieces dry for about 24 hours. Here you can see how I remove the excess of stain using a clean piece of cloth. I do not want to leave any excess. I repeat the process of soaking well with the stain, letting it act, and then drying the excess for the gavel's head. And once I finish, I will let it dry, mounted in the Morse taper cone of the shaft center. For finish, I will give it several coats of clear satin polyurethane. I am going to apply 2 coats separated a few hours one from the other. Then I will let it stay for a whole day. Sand lightly with 400 grit sandpaper, clean well the dust, and then apply another coat. I will let it stay for another day and finally apply the last coat. This is applied with a synthetic paint brush. The polyurethane layers have to be thin. A little yields a lot, and it will dry more evenly than coarser coats. As I mentioned before, after 2 layers, I let it dry for a whole day, and now I will sand it very lightly with 400 grit sandpaper. Before applying the final coats, I remove completely the dust left by the sanding. The finishing process takes some time, particularly all the weights between coat and coat. But as you can see in these images, the final look is great. It does not make sense to hurry this stage after all the work and effort that we put until this point. To avoid boring you, I have edited a lot of the material, but a good finish requires to be patient. Okay, my friends, here you have it, the block and the gavel. The gavel in 2 pieces, the handle goes threaded inside the head. The finish, I think, came out really nice. You can see also I put the logo coin on the back, and I hope the members of the committee like it. For all of you, I hope you enjoyed this video. If that's the case, please don't forget to mark the like button below, make comments, and if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please do so. Over there is going to appear the button to facilitate the subscription. And it will be until the next one. Cheers!